My name is Kate Benson, Catherine Benson. My email address is catherine.benson@scouting.org. I most recently have been part of our council staff team for the last 2.5 years in our development department. So when you see like the online donation portals that pop up for our Friends of Scouting campaign, or hear about special events, Tim, your son, was actually helped out with one of our special events. It was great to have you guys there. That was me kind of hovering behind the scenes, working to raise resources for our Scout programs. I've recently been selected as a Scout executive for the Piedmont Council, about 70 miles north. So this is one of the very last things I'm doing with this council. Thank you, Tina. I'm also a Scout mom. I am the outgoing Cub Master for Pack 785. My younger daughter is a bear cub in that pack. My older daughter is a Tenderfoot Scout with Troop 2799 in Morgan Hill for a little bit longer, and then we'll transfer up to our new council soon. That's my background with Scouting. It'll be 18 years in January. So I love this program and what we do. And so let's jump in. Scouts have great stories. We visit beautiful landscapes, all different types, especially here in California. We go on great adventures. Our Scouts develop amazing life skills, and for that matter, so do we as their parents and their guides. And we all form lasting friendships. We have our cameras on hand to capture some of these experiences as they happen, and the images that we capture can draw people into Scouting. They capture not only our memories, but they also help us share the story of what we're doing and allow us to invite people to engage with the image, but also to engage with the program. And it's really cool. All right, so this is what I love. Today, we're going to talk about overarching photography themes, kind of what we're hoping to capture when we take really great images. We're going to touch briefly on Scout branding, and afterwards I can share the brand standards. If you ever need some bedtime reading, it gets pretty detailed down to the exact color composition that you can use. I'd like to point out that that is Scouting Tan at the bottom of the slide there. We'll talk about some really general composition guidelines. We will touch on permissions, what's legal and what's courteous. We'll dig into our tools if we have time a little bit. If you have your cell phone camera handy or whatever other camera that you want to dig into, we can talk a little bit about like aperture settings and light settings and how, what we can do to practice. And then we'll talk through a couple of my images, like what's good about this image and how can it be better. And then if we have a chance, I'd love for you to share any images you have, but more importantly, I want you to share them with our council. I want you to be able to share them as appropriate, to share the story of what we're doing, whether it's normal, non-COVID related Scouting or Scouting at home, or the adventures we have through Scoutorama that are happening right now. So this is what we'll be doing. So let's talk about themes. Thematically, when we talk about sharing the Scouting story, the best photos fall into one or two categories. That's living and doing. Those living photos that are images that capture a candid, memorable moment, something quiet, something maybe right before or after the adventure. And doing are photos of active Scouts physically engaging with the world, right? So let's talk a little bit about that living imagery. This, by the way, is from the Brand Standards Guide. I just copied and pasted it straight in. These photos capture the quiet moment before or after an activity. They have a story to tell that might be obvious, but even better, they leave a little to the imagination. And so you can kind of look at it, right? Like, oh, that quiet moment, with you can't see me pointing to the screen. Right before they go, paddleboarding, or right after they've come off the zip line, or when they're waking up and they're kind of, got the coffee, making it out of the tent. That might be more our generation than the Scouts, but right, that moment right before they release the arrow. So these are, these are the images that are, candid though. They're not the posed shots, right? These are just, in moments. I love campfire photos, like at twilight with the campfire going, where I still have enough ambient light to get a really good image. And you can capture those smiles and that engagement around the campfire, whether they're singing a song or just talking story. So these are some examples of that living theme, right? And then the doing imagery. This is really the heart of what we like to capture and share. Scouting is active, and sometimes it's hard, especially with the age groups we're working with, right? The grade school, the middle school, they're moving. And some of my best images have been of scouts, where I finally get the scout in focus and the whole image is blurred just because they're moving so fast. That's been fun, right? And they capture scout motion, as this says, just at the right moment. But a lot of the images, when they're engaging with the world, this is truly what we're trying to capture. So as we think about the story that we're telling, these are some of the overarching themes. And let's just take a quick, branding thought, right? Boy Scouts of America actually has a, 40-page brand standards guide. And they have a section on photography. We just pulled 2 of the pages out of that there. The uniform is part of our brand. And whenever we see a scout in uniform, we're telling the scouting story. So whenever I send images to our marketing department, or if I capture images at Scoutorama, the opening image of the really colorful one with the scouts and those 2 tiger cubs, that was from Scoutorama. And so whenever I capture that, I'm looking for scouts in uniform, recognizably in scouting uniform, whether it's a really clear activity t-shirt, but even better, our shirt. This is part of our brand. We always want to keep it appropriate. I don't think, I've never met an adult in this class who has any confusion about that, but we're looking for being consistent with scouting values, the Scout Oath and Law. If it looks like, even if the kids are, roughhousing or they're having kind of fun with each other, but it looks like one of them has them in a chokehold, no, that's not a good picture to share, and I have a set of kids that are sisters, that kind of thing happens a lot, right? So, but it's just kind of like, some images are fun that we just kind of keep ourselves, and some are good to share the broader story because they don't have to be explained. And as we think about the communication elements at the heart of our mission, at the heart of what we do, our kids and we go on great adventures. We're working with them on developing leadership. We want to communicate and convey what they're learning, and we want to convey the service that is one of the methods of scouting. So these 4 elements, as we think about these overarching themes and then kind of these sub-themes here, this is what we're looking to convey. So that's part of the storytelling when we think about what story are we trying to share. So as an example, one of the young ladies in my daughter's troop had her service project. We actually, I took some great photos, but Hal Hendrickson also came in and took some photos, and she was written up as part of the Monday Eagle Scout service project. But the idea is, this is a really clear image and example of service that's happening even during COVID, and we were able to share that story through the imagery. And that would fall under that service, but also the leadership and the learning. So let's talk about, in really broad strokes, compositional elements. And there's a lot that goes into photography and good images, but these 4 will kind of help you, if you're not already thinking about them, then these will help you shape and craft some really good photos, either while you're taking it or as you crop it and play with it afterwards. The rule of thirds means, imagine dividing the picture into thirds vertically and horizontally, right? And where those vertical and horizontal lines intersect, a third from the right, a third from the left, a third from the top, a third from the bottom, those are good points for focal points. So a face is great to go in that left third, for example, or that right third, or vertical elements or horizontal elements. Or if you have like a big landscape, sky in the upper third, mountains in the middle third, trees in the bottom third. As we think about it, can we break the photo into thirds and put key points at those intersection lines? Does that make sense? I guess so. I see Tina nodding. That's good. So when we talk about the rule of thirds, it's just kind of making sure that not everything is bullseye in the middle of the photo. Sometimes symmetry is a beautiful thing. It's not always bad. But when we compose our photos, like I said, either while we're taking them or as we're cropping them down and kind of finishing them off afterwards, we want to think about how can we divide this image into thirds and have some fun with the movement of the image in a still photo. When we talk, compose people intentionally, look at how are they moving in the image. And I realize we're talking about still photography as opposed to digital, but if someone is actively walking, I want them to be walking into the image and not walking out of it, right? As an example. We're going to want to keep color in mind. Can we do color blocking? Can we simplify the color structure? Can we look for common color themes in the foreground and the background? And then finally, when we're taking the picture, use high and low angles. A lot of us get into the habit of, here I am standing and I take the picture right here. And a lot of great images come from standing on a chair. Have a spotter if you need one, right? I've climbed up on a picnic table to get a picture like this, or get down at the level of the scout, or get down below the level of the scout to get a shot upwards. And so I've got an example for each of these, but these things will help you if you're not already thinking about them. These are a good place to start. All right, so let's play with this rule of thirds. This is an okay image, right? So this is my daughter Kaisa a couple years ago at a pack fishing trip. And as I cropped it in, what I was trying to do, and then can you see my cursor floating on the screen? Great. So if we were to draw a line that shows the top third of the photo, I did a good job of getting her face in the upper third. It's just not, it would be even better if her face was centered right here, right? But I've got her off center, off to the third, and then the fish is over here in the right third, right? So we've got a background and a foreground, and that's what I was trying to do. We've also got a lot of color in the left 2/3 and a little bit darker on the right third. So as I'm thinking about the rule of thirds, that's how that comes into play with this particular image and why I cropped it down the way I did. This is Ireton on a pack hike up at Mount Madonna this summer, clearly this summer because we've all got face masks on. And this is kind of illustrating composing people intentionally. And there's a couple of things here. I very intentionally, he's looking off to his right, to our left, right? And so I wanted him in the right third of the photo so that he's engaging with the rest of the photo. This covers both kind of the rule of thirds, but also composing people intentionally. It'd be even better if I didn't have my daughter sticking out of his shoulder there, or if I'd managed to blur that a little better. And he's in full scouting uniform, which he always shows him the scout uniform, which I love him and his mom both for that. And so that's great. If we weren't in the midst of COVID, it would be even better if we could see his face and see the smile that I know is there. And if I were to play with the lighting and be able to bring out his eyes a little more, that's what would make this image even better. But that's part of what we're looking at as we look at composing people intentionally and capturing them, how they interact with the rest of the space that the photo is capturing. Okay. This one is kind of talking about keeping color in mind. I love this because we've got the blues that are echoed between the rim of his hat and his shirt, and the bright orange of the balloon and the bright orange of his hat. And so blue and orange are really the two colors that pop the most in this image. And I did everything I could to bring out his face and his eyes. And then, the background is blurred here so that we've got a little bit of depth and a focus on him. But the color is a lot of fun in this, and it really brings out that this is a tiger cub. He was technically actually a wolf cub because it was June at day camp. But when I think about color, and then the rest of the colors in this image are kind of muted in background. And so it's really bringing him and the balloon powered car to the forefront as we think about the color and the way that the color pops in this image. And then I talked about using high and low angles. And so these are more of those like scout living images, right? But this one's fun because we got the scouts that are doing, this is, and anytime you have to explain an image, right? It's not as good, right? But they've got a little set of cards right here of campfire conversation starters. What's your favorite type of ice cream and why? So and they're waiting their turn at the slingshot range, and so the four of them are gathered together. They're engaging with each other. Poor Carter here is just like, I'm so tired, right? But this was taken, it's visually interesting because it's a different angle, right? I got up on a chair, tried not to loom over the poor Cub Scouts, and got that shot looking down instead of kind of 3 steps back and just angled down. With this one on the right, poor Kaisa, it was a troop camp out, and due to COVID, she was the only kid there. It was kind of a lonely camp out, but she earned her scout rank. But the idea of, I crouched down, I got as close to the ground as I could to kind of look up and capture the landscape in the background. This one would be, and I like the color in this one where the way the B4 bucket kind of echoes the fire that's in the campfire ring there. It'd be even better if the landscape was level and not tilted. But this one I'm primarily using to kind of illustrate, get those different heights, get much higher than you normally do, get much lower than you normally do. We're 22 minutes. It's a great time to take a stretch break, right? So everyone just, stand up and reach up like you're getting a photo from up high. For reals, yeah, stand up, stretch, because otherwise I get cramps in my legs, great. And then, scoot your chair back and squat down if you can do so safely, and, kind of look, you can't see me, right? But look down underneath, take a picture from down low, right? Photography is a surprisingly physical endeavor. And so think of the different angles. Where can I capture that really cool image? Besides, in my case, about 5'4" off the ground. All right. So a lot of you had questions about permissions and talent releases and what's appropriate and all that good stuff. The overwhelming primary driver to keep in mind is that a scout is courteous, right? That's what that has stood me in good stead. Legally, if you're in a public space like at Scoutorama or a council event, out at a public park, there isn't a reasonable expectation of privacy, which means that you could just take pictures and post them willy-nilly and share them with the council, and there are no legal ramifications for you, right? If you're in a more private space, you really need to at least have a conversation with the scout and the parent or guardian. Hey, I'm taking pictures. We're going to post them on our PAC's Facebook page. Do you have any concerns about that? Do you have any problems? I've been doing this for 17 years. And I can't think of any times when someone has said, no, I don't want to do that. But there's a couple of things you can do. If you're in at a district Pinewood Derby or a PAC Pinewood Derby, if you've got a family that has safety concerns, having a father or mother in law enforcement is certainly a viable option. It doesn't matter, right? A scout is courteous. If they don't want their imagery posted for any reason, something that I learned from another youth serving organization and something that our VP of marketing does is he has those little dot stickers, like a fluorescent orange dot, and just has to put them on the collar of their shirt. And now you're not telling the scout, hey, get out of the picture. Now you're just taking pictures, and then anything with that scout with the dot on their shirt, you just delete those. Don't share those. And that's a good way so that you don't have to remember the whole day, but it's not really singling them out in the same way of saying, hey, get out of the group photo. Oh, now you can just kind of go, oh, I'm going to try and, as I take the picture, I'm going to try and crop the scout out, but I know that I can delete that image, and that's a trigger to me to get rid of it and not share it without messing with that kid's opportunity to engage in the program. So, and as you get to know your PAC, as you get to know your troop, if you have any families that have some concerns about that, you'll know it, right? And, as you get to know them, but that type of conversation and that's a really good way to kind of be respectful and be courteous. If you're doing something on a broader scale, especially if it might generate any sort of income, we're probably not involved with anything like that at the PAC or troop level. You can do a talent release form, and I'll share a link to that, but you can also just Google talent release form. There is actually a talent release form as part of medical form part A. And can I click on this and we can come back to that. But if you look at your medical form part A, B, and C, upper right-hand corner of part A, and that really text dense section that maybe nobody ever reads, people do sign as part of that. I authorize local council and I authorize national to use images of me, as part of sharing the story of scouting. That's the gist of it, right? So, John, I see a question.
Yeah, so we had a question in the chat from Tim. Would you take a picture of the back of a person?
Yeah, and that's absolutely fine. There's a lot of ways you can do to hide identity. So back of the head is a good way. The challenge we have with taking back of the head images is that they're not engaging, right? You can't see the expression. It's excellent for privacy. Absolutely, and that's a great way to do it. And if you've got someone you're not sure about, or if a family said yes, okay, then we're gonna work to honor their unspoken wishes because the scout is courteous. So the back of the head is fine. Maybe a 1/4 profile shot where you can see that it's a scout, but you can't really see who it is. Stuff like that, is fine as well. But if you're in something that's going to be distributed much more broadly, as an example, did any of you, just by a show of hands, do the national camp-in last May? Anybody? Oh, it was so cool. Yeah, okay. And so I have friends up in Portland, and they said, hey, Kate, can your daughters do a skit? I'm like, yes, of course they can. So, we submitted a little skit for the girls, the song. And everybody whose imagery was, pulled together as part of that national campaign campfire program, Portland actually had a digital talent release form. Hey, here's my name, here's my scout's name. I, in writing, give permission for this council to use this imagery, because it was broadcast all over the country. And so they were really dotting their I's, crossing their T's, and being very, very careful about it, and making sure that everything was good. And that was the talent release form. So you can, I can share a link for a generic one. If you type in BSA talent release form, you can pull up stuff as well. Legally, because we're not getting paid when we post an image of something on Facebook, there's no legal repercussions. If anyone has any concerns, we immediately delete it. But again, we keep going back to that overarching, a scout is courteous. And so if someone has any qualms about their imagery being shared, we just don't do it. And like I said, even when I'm in a public place, in a public setting, I still have that quick conversation with the scouts and their guardians. Hey, is it okay if I share this? Just to check, just to make sure, to let them know this could go up. And most folks are actually really excited, especially to see something through the council channel, or to see something in a video, or to see something on the Scoutorama flyer. It's cool, it's fun, right? I feel like, oh, I'm part of the council. But we always have those conversations, and that's to communicate and share what you're doing. Does that make sense? Any further questions on that?
Could you elaborate on the getting paid part?
Yeah. So like we're,
what's the concern?
Probably, I don't have any concern about that. We don't pay people to be part of videos. We're not generating income, to like you would see with a Hollywood film type of idea. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Just thinking,
so,
any concern with fundraising? There is money that's being.
There's money coming. Yeah. So when we use like those, yeah, no, that's a great question. Yeah. So, it's good. So when we did, we really clearly communicate if we're doing something that's going to intentionally be used for a fundraising purpose, whether it's a pledge card or our Scouting on the Front Lines video or something in between. And we just, like I said, in my case, I have those conversations. Would you volunteer to be a part of this? We'd love to have you represent Scouting as part of this. And again, I've never had anybody say, no, I can't do it because, I don't want to sign a talent release form. It's always been, I'm sorry, I've got another meeting at that time. I just can't be there.
Okay. And then the other question I had is, how do you keep track of this? To be honest, because if I've got somebody in our troop that has a family that has an issue, how do I make sure that we honor that, systemically? Because I'm not going to be there watching every photo being taken and every post that's going in. So how do we manage it?
We ask them to pay attention as well, in a situation like that, because they're the common thread. And so we ask the parents to really kind of keep an eye out for, just to communicate with anyone who's maybe recording stuff and what might go on. Keep an eye on it, and check in on the troop Facebook page or wherever you might be posting it. And we're going to do our very, very best to honor this an ongoing issue. Our scouts sometimes do this as well. And so we want to make sure that we communicate with them, so if you have a troop historian or a troop social media, captain, so to speak, just a quiet conversation. Hey, Johnny's dad has asked that we not post pictures of him, and so just, and it doesn't need to be a big troop announcement. Just, okay, who's posting pictures on Facebook? And, can Johnny's dad keep an eye on that? If he's, engaged in the troop, it might even be appropriate to give him administrator rights so he can pull down a photo right away if he sees something that's of concern. So those are the types of ways that I would manage that, especially when there's any sort of safety concerns. So if you have any sort of custody issue, if you have somebody who's in law enforcement that's concerned about their child, anything along those lines, we just want to, they don't come up very often, to be honest. So it's not as difficult to manage as you think. And like I said, we just have those conversations. Hey, I think, oh, this is a great photo. I'd like to share this with the council. Is this okay? You know, and oh yeah, that sounds great. Or, oh, no, okay. So does that answer your question?
Yep, sure did. Thank you.
Absolutely. Okay. So as we think about the cameras we're using, almost every single picture I'm taking with my cell phone camera. And the really cool thing is they've gotten a lot better. So if you're much more into photography, you probably have even better equipment. And so if you have a digital SLR, a SLR is single lens reflex, or a DSLR is a digital version of that. When I first started studying photography, I was a freshman at Portland State University. It was the last year they still had a dark room. And I actually failed my major level change. I was a music major because I spent so much time in the dark room. It was so much fun taking black and white pictures and developing them. And I was like, digital will never be as good. But now I'm like, oh yeah, this is great. It's a lot easier to edit. It's a lot easier to share. I don't have that weird chemical smell stuck in my hair for a week. You know, it's all good. So a couple of really quick tips. Whatever camera you're going to use, make sure it's good quality. And if it's a digital, make sure it's got enough pixels, you know, the megapixels and all that good stuff, right? If you have the ability and you have a nice camera, get a good lens. That makes a huge difference in the quality of images that you can capture, because my cell phone camera is like 21 megapixel, but I'm working with the lens that came with the camera, right? So that's the limiting factor, not the resolution. Whatever camera you use, make sure it's readily available. That's why I love my cell phone camera. I could have the fanciest camera in the world, but it's not in my hip pocket. So I've learned how to use this one because that's what's going to function better for what I'm doing. I like my cell phone because it's easy to share images. It's easy to organize them. I've got Google. I don't have an iPhone. I have an Android. And it ties to my Google albums, and I can organize those albums and share just specific pictures with the other parents in my pack. I can share them with the marketing at svnbc.org. If it's a good image that might be good for the, general marketing for our council, I can share it with their program directors if they want to share some cool images from a recent event, whether it's Scatorama or Cub Scout, shootout at Camp Cheeseboro, or anything else that we're doing. If you have your camera handy, pull it out and turn on your camera app or open up your camera. There's a couple of things that are really cool. When I open up my camera, and I don't know if you can see this on my little itty bitty screen, at the bottom on my app, I've got different settings. I've got night sight, portrait, camera, video, and more. And more opens up slow motion, a panorama option, a time-lapse option, which is really cool, and playing with my lens. I typically default to what on my camera is called portrait mode. And what that does is it opens up the aperture. So if you're working with an SLR or a DSLR, opening up the aperture will allow you to narrow what's in focus. So that's how you get those blurry backgrounds with a really sharp foreground image when you're trying to do portrait photography. It allows you to play a little bit with the light. And so I generally, especially when I'm doing those quote unquote living images where I want to blur the background, where the scout himself or herself is not in extreme motion, I'm going straight to portrait because I've got that wide aperture on my lens. I've got that narrow band of focus. And so I can really focus in and play with the depth of the image. And that's my general default. You can see that a little bit, right? So Ben is in focus. The dehydrated flat dead frog in his hands is in focus. This is from our litter pickup last Saturday with my Cub Scout pack. But the road behind him, his little sister Annie, they're all blurred and out of focus. And so the eye is really drawn to Ben's enormous smiling eyes. And if you can't tell, the poor flat dead frog that they found while we were picking up litter. And so I got that by using portrait mode, and that's what portrait mode does. And I find that it's really nice. So if you don't already have it open up the camera app on your phone and play with, okay, portrait mode. And I start by just kind of playing with, how do I focus it? In my phone, I tap the screen where I want the camera to focus. And then I start playing with pictures. If I take a picture of my bright red cup with my blue bedding in the background and my blue water bottle next to it, how does that turn out? And my camera, it actually gives me the focused image, and then it gives me the one that's taken kind of with, I don't know what the software is doing behind the scenes. It's amazing. I even have the ability when I'm in portrait mode to change how much the background is blurred. And so I can play with what is the overall composition, where is the eye focusing? Because sometimes we want those background elements. Sometimes maybe there's a road that they're walking down and we want to see the road curve off into the distance. So portrait mode is great. If you have some sort of shutter speed, if you've ever seen those really cool images of like the star trails, there's a beautiful shot of the climbing tower at Camp High Sierra that's on my other computer, where you can see the stars kind of streaking across. That comes from, you can't do that holding the camera, right? This is where you get a tripod and you set it up so that the camera does not move at all, but you have that long exposure in dark light, and you can get those really neat images. So you can play with shutter speed. If you want to get that kind of imagery where the scout is moving across the screen and the background is really blurry, you can actually play with your shutter speed and let the shutter stay open a touch longer, and that will give you that feeling of motion, right? So as we look at our cell phone cameras, as they're getting more sophisticated, these are some of the options we have. But I almost always, in my case, default straight to portrait mode because that gives me a chance to play with the depth and that wide angle and get more light in. And then night sight is great for those campfire living type of imagery, which is wonderful for the memories too, because that's where we build those relationships. But for the action shots, there's usually an action setting on your phone as well. And on my phone, it's called Playground. But that that gives you a chance to play with the settings in different ways. And so it kind of gives you a chance to think of what kind of image am I trying to capture? Is it a little quieter? Is portrait mode better? Or is it a little more action filled? Do I need to make sure that I've got, you know, a different setting that I can capture the image more clearly, the action more clearly? Does that make sense? I'm looking for nods or shaking heads. I would say definitely play with it. I practice with my girls. Like I said, I've got a bear cub and a tenderfoot, and they are in a lot of the images that I've shared today. So, you know, we have some fun with it. Tim, really quickly in like 3 minutes or less, is there anything you'd like to add to that since we don't have everybody's equipment with us?
Another important thing to do, especially for a cell phone, is make sure your lens is clean.
Yeah.
I've taken many shots where I didn't realize I touched the lens, and it's kind of, you have that little glow from the oils from your hand. So so that's one of the more important things for cell phones, is because we're always handling it. So no, you covered everything. Like I tell my scouts to do the merit badge with me is play with your camera, get to know your camera. So it becomes almost like a appendix that you could use. I'm always playing with my camera and still learning features on my camera, even though it's one of the older ones, but always play with it. So then you kind of ingrain it into your memory of how to use it.
Absolutely. And if you don't have, you know, a scout handy to practice on, then just, you know, go to troop meetings and play with high, low, composition, color, the rule of thirds, action versus still. And what's the story of what's happening? Are they learning a skill? Is there a way to capture that with the image? Are they developing their leadership skills by working with a younger scout? Can we capture that? You know, and practice. That's the most important thing, is have some fun while you're practicing. All right. So we captured that. Yay! I was working ahead. Oh, and that's Ben again. Same activity. They were alive when he found them. They were some tadpoles. I don't know if they were alive when he put them back, but we encouraged him, you know, to remember the outdoor code and treat everything with respect. But he was super excited to find the tadpoles in what was essentially a mud puddle. It was pretty cool. All right. And I have to share the story because you'll all identify with this, right? Ben walked over, he found it's in the rainy season, it's a creek or a river. This time of year, we were really excited to actually find a puddle. And he stepped in, he lost a shoe that got sucked out by the mud. He took the shoe off, he had the shoe in one hand, he had a handful of tadpoles in the other, and he's squelching over in his shoe and his sock. Dad, look what I found. Oh, Ben. And I was so mad because I didn't capture the picture of him with the tadpoles in one hand and the muddy shoe in the other. That would have been an even better story, right? But we did get this one because he had the shoe back on by this point. I don't know whether the sock made it or not. But this is, a lot of fun. All right, so let's talk about, what's good about this picture and what would make it better. So, what's good about this image, if anything?
It's fun.
Yeah, it tells a story, right? The story of mom and daughter kind of out in the park and playing. So we've got that. We've got a little bit of a story.
And also the background is a little bit blurry, so you can get focus on the mom and daughter.
Mm-hmm. What would make this image better? As we think about composition and story and other stuff.
I guess to make it like 1/3 rule, maybe tilt it up a little bit, maybe.
Maybe, yeah, kind of get the more blue sky in the background and like in the upper 2/3. That would make it, that would be very nice. Another thing that I thought, in my, at the time, 10-year-old daughter was taking this photo, right? So I'm just thrilled it came out at all. If I could like Photoshop myself, a little bit from the viewer's perspective, the left, right? So we've got that line from the boardwalk behind me, the bridge behind me, kind of, going off into the distance. And it would be really cool if visually that as it's going off into the distance, does it lead to me, right? Because my eye wants to follow as we look at the image from the right to the left. And it would be nice if my daughter and I were closer to visually the left third of it, so that we were closer to where the eye is leading through the bridge, right? That compositionally would make it fun. And a little bit of my daughter's right foot got cut off. So if we could, not cut off the foot, that would make it a little bit better too. But it's just a lot of fun. That was a great day at the park.
So actually, I have a question.
Sure.
When people are taking group shots, is it important to keep their feet in there?
We try not to cut off like somebody's, face, and we try not to cut off a hand, right? Because just cutting off their hand or just cutting off their foot is awkward, but having their whole, torso out of the shot isn't. And so it's kind of like, don't cut them off at the ankles if you can help it. But if you can find it, as you're taking those group shots, that's fine too. It's just, as we think about those candids, try not to cut it off at an awkward spot. Because it's not awkward at all to cut off my legs, but it is a little bit awkward to cut off on his toes, right? So it's kind of like where do we naturally kind of segment our bodies? All right, great question. So another one, what's good about this photo?
You cut the bubble.
Yeah, it is good timing. Sometimes it's really hard to capture, like with some of my cell phones, like there's a little bit of lag and you might miss the bubble.
Mm-hmm. I took a lot of photos to get this image. There were like 15 or 20 easily pictures that I took. And so, yeah, I got lucky with the timing on this one. And there were another almost 24 photos that I'm just like, delete. And that's the great thing about digital photography. We can delete all day. Right? It's, for those of us who remember the film cameras, especially if we're developing our own film, man, there was an investment in every single image. There isn't anymore, which means it's a lot easier to get lucky and capture the timing of those moments than it was back when we were investing and paying for every picture to be developed. I'm still like in awe that I can take 500 pictures, and even out in the field, I'm deleting a bunch of them as I go. And then I can upload like the best 5 to Costco and pay $1.27 for my favorite 5 photos. Like, that is so cool. So that's, yeah, you're right. We caught the bubble. There were a lot of pictures where we didn't catch the bubble. As we think about the composition, what else is good?
So I think the angle is really good. It's facing towards the camera. I think that's the perfect angle.
Jose from the chat says the rule of thirds.
yeah, I was able to get her kind of in the right third of the picture. If I were to able to smoosh the picture to the viewer's right just a little bit so that she was right on that line of the right third and the big part of the bubble was on the line of the left third, it'd be even better, right? As we look at her face, I was able to capture an image where her face is lit up, but her eyes are still shadowed. So if I could have found a way to capture the light a little differently and get a little more light actually on her eyes, and that might have been getting lower, getting a slightly different angle. I was really trying to find it because the background is so bright. I was able to blur the background, but she still doesn't pop as much as I'd like. It would be nice if I could change so the background was a little darker and her eyes especially are a little bit more in the light. That would make it a better image too. It's not bad. It's just, that's what would make it better as we think through. And that's just part of the fun. We absolutely want you to share your pictures, whether you're sharing them with your families, even when you only share it internally, that helps really cement it. Maybe not all the parents could be at the activity. Maybe you have a chance if you're to share them with your chartering organization. My daughter's Cub Scout pack is chartered by a school. And so I share the album of images with the school principal every time. Thank you. This is your Cub Scout pack and here's your kids and you get to see them every day, but check this out. Even if all you ever do is share them internally, you can still share them and do that with the parents so they can see what their kids are learning, doing, how they're growing, and having fun. If it's appropriate, please share them with our council. We love sharing our Scouts adventures. If you want to just email it as a possible general image to be used anywhere for marketing, marketing at svmbc.org is great. And that goes to a selected set of professional and volunteer scouters who can, kind of cultivate these images and use them, as appropriate. Margaret.Caldwell@scouting.org is our staff advisor for the marketing department. As we think about activities, it's great to send them to the staff advisor for an activity. Diane Betts is our key point for a lot of our Cub Scout activities. Think Scoutorama, think day camp, think a lot of good stuff. She loves getting great photos and sharing them. As we're doing our digital DIN meetings, she's getting a lot of those photos and she's able to share them. And it's really fun to be able to share the story of what's going on. I am encouraging, I've been the staff advisor for the Bear digital DIN meetings, and it's been so much fun to see that pictures of the kids coming in from hikes. Even if they're not beautiful compositional photos, it's really great to see our kids out doing scouting. And it's part of how we can share our story. So Diane spells her name with 2 N's, diane.betts@scouting.org. And then there's, and she can also disperse to other staff advisors. So if we have Camp High Sierra would be Anthony Burston Thomas. Same thing with anything that happens over at Camp Cheeseboro. Where appropriate, where you're in a good shape to do it, share it on Facebook and Instagram. One thing I'd like to touch on really briefly, John, yes.
So we had a question from Matthew in the chat. He says, nice that you spent the time to sort out all the good photos from the bad ones. Have you ever watched somebody's album in which they didn't cut out all the bad photos?
That was just a rhetorical question, not an actual question.
All right, so next time put rhetorical in there.
The short answer is yes. A lot of time to come in and be a photographer for me at a special event because I know if I'm the staff advisor for something, I won't have the time to go take good photos. And I have literally gotten an album of 1,000 photos. And I'm like, yeah, you pick out the ones you like. It's painful. I'm like, please, you were there. Can you skim through and just send me like the best 5? That's.
Sorry, there was another question from, I think it's from Jose. Sorry, my chat window is really small. Any official tags to use for Instagram posts?
Oh, great question. I'll have to look that up. I know that for different events, we do have official tags. Scout Me In is always good. When you're posting something on Facebook or Instagram at whatever the council's handle is, I think it's SVMBCBSA or Silicon Valley Monterey Bay Council. And I know on Facebook and Instagram, if you start with the @ and start typing it in, it'll help you find the right one. So yeah, we love it when you tag the council, you know, on your great imagery, great stories. So that's a good thing. Someone had mentioned a private Facebook page. You know, we don't have the social media police that are going to go pull anything down, but National has recommended not to have any private social media groups. And the reason for that is due to screenshots, due to other ways, nothing is truly private. And it is much better to only share those things that you know could be public anyways, because there's always a possibility it could be. Having private stuff is also a youth protection concern, because now we have the possibility for contact that isn't able to be monitored, right? So as we think about that too deep leadership, that applies to all of our digital communication as well. So we don't want to have any Facebook messaging between a single scout and an adult that's not their parent. We don't want to have any emails between a single scout and an adult that's not their parent, right? So National says don't do private or secret Facebook groups. Just don't go down that path. Because, like I said, due to screenshots, due to other ways, that stuff could still be shared. And it's a false sense of security. And so, you know, that doesn't necessarily change overnight, but I just want to make sure everyone was aware of that, because things can be shared digitally, you know, even when we think they can't be. But we love and we encourage social media posting. We just want it to be public and open and transparent, which means that we have to think about the content that we're putting up. But that's a good filter to have. All right, great questions. And then for the resources, these are all hyperlinks. I don't know if you can click on them or not, but if you want, I can send them out afterwards. If you Google BSA brand guidelines, there is, like I said, that big document that's great bedtime reading if you're having trouble getting to sleep. But it talks about the heart of what we're trying, you know, what is our brand all about? Prepared for life. We're helping our scouts be prepared for life. We're building character, citizenship, leadership, and fitness, right? As we think about those stories, you know, and we think about what we're conveying, you know, that's the heart of our brand right there. Our mission statement to help young people make ethical and moral choices over the course of their lifetimes by instilling in them the values of the Scout Oath and Law. You know, that's our mission statement. That's the core of our brand right there. And then we think about how do we communicate that, you know, with the uniform, with consistent colors and fonts and imagery. That's, you know, that's the great thing about the brand guidelines. You don't have to read that. If you stick to the Scout Oath and Law, you're in good shape. But there's a lot of detail if you want to dig into it. There is a BSA social media playbook. They put it out, I don't know, maybe 4 years ago, give or take a little bit. And there hasn't been a major update to it, but it covers Facebook and Instagram and all sorts of different types of social media, blogs and web pages. And there's some good guidelines in there as well. And if you want to look at compositional elements, honestly, you can Google photo composition, and there's like 9 top compositional elements, or 12 compositional elements to keep in mind, and you can scroll through those and you start to see the consistency. I pulled probably the most important 4 up for this presentation, but you can really dig into thinking about the geometry and how the picture flows and having some fun with that. The more important part is it in line with our brand? Is it in line with our values? Are we looking at basic compositional guidelines? Are we being courteous with how we're taking and how we're sharing our imagery? Those are the really important things that we need to dig into first. And then as we look at our skill set, am I spending time playing with my tools, with my cell phone or my camera or something else, and getting comfortable and confident with it? Those are the most important principles. There we go. So we really appreciate your time today. Are there any other questions?
I guess this is part comment, part question for other people, but I think my troop is very conservative. Nobody posts anything on Facebook or Instagram, and we have basically we use a private SmugMug account where at least parents can post photos there, and it's not shared to anybody without a link. And um, I guess, um, with our troop, we go to whoever has the most privacy sensitive, where we just don't post things. And I was just wondering, have there been other people? I guess the example of the policeman is a good example, but I guess do other troops? Is there a lot of posting on Facebook, Instagram, or is this not controlled by the troop?
Anybody else want to weigh in on that?
Our troop also just has what you're calling a smug mug. We have like a Google Drive or something where parents can go and just take a look at the photos from the last outing and take what they want from there. We don't have any kind of social media thing going on with our troop.
And since that's private, is that sufficient for everybody?
They're very happy with that.
Yeah.
So our trip is the same. We don't share in public, but we also have a snap mug at the same site.
So Michael, I'm kind of curious about, you have your one police guy. I mean, would he have objections to like posting photos to a private like SmugMug account or a Google account?
His request was to have 0 photos taken, not even posted, but not even taken. And it was
of him or his kids or both?
Entire family. Yeah, and it was a safety thing.
Yeah, so it might work well with the putting the dots on the collar for those particular people.
Yeah, especially where you've got more than you taking pictures, because as you get to know the families, you can learn and share. But a lot of it goes back to, and this is a great discussion. The Scout is courteous. If folks don't want their images out, then even though legally we could share them, that would run against and counter to the values that we are teaching our Scouts, with the Scout Oath and Law. So that is our primary standard right there. And that's the most important one. And so, sometimes, think about, if you want to share great imagery as part of, if you have a public facing website, or because like with beascout.org, we have the ability to share a PAC website or share a PAC Facebook page. My PAC doesn't have one. And so we just leave that part blank, right? But if you do have one, that's a great place to share photos as well, as long as everyone's comfortable doing so. So with the families in my PAC, they all know I take a lot of pictures and I share them with the council and I share them on my Facebook page. But I still, every time, have a quick conversation. Hey, is it okay if I share these photos? Is it okay if I take these photos? And just because the Scout is courteous. But great questions. And where you do have that, there is if you're trying to do some recruitment stuff and you want to have some imagery on social media, but you've got families that are very concerned about, their Scouts, whether it's for safety or privacy, National has some really great imagery that is available to go ahead and plug in as well. So if you don't want to have original content in there, you can still bring great imagery in from the membership and marketing hub that National has. And I usually type in BSA membership and marketing hub into Google, and that gets me to the right spot.
Okay, we're probably going to have to wrap things up since it's a little after 2 and other folks might have classes to go to at this point. But there was one final question from Jose. He wanted to know if he could get a copy of the slideshow.
Yeah, we'll figure out, I'll see if I can drop it into Google Slides or some other way to share it along with the links. So. Absolutely. So I'm teaching another class on Tuesday. By that point, I'll be able to share with the whole crowd all the requests for information, just in case they have a question that we didn't think of today. So excellent. Thank you for your time, everybody. Thank you for your leadership and your investment in our next generation. You are doing great things and we appreciate it.
Hey.
Okay, thank you.
Kate, this was terrific.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kate.
Fabulous. Did
That
you kick
went
them all
really
in the
well.
waiting room or what's
There's
that?
Nobody in the waiting room. Everybody's gone.
Okay.
That went really well. You did such an awesome job on this one, Kate. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah, no, it was really good. It went a little bit long, but I mean, you were
Mhm.
wrapping things up. It was a matter of answering questions, I think, at the point where it was starting to get critical on the time. But even so, I think everybody's going to be able to jump into their 2 o'clock class if they have one with no problems.
Okay, and that's good to know. As we look at Tuesday, because I was just thinking, oh, I've got this class, I got this class on Tuesday. So I'm glad we mentioned it earlier. So as we got to 150, I was looking at like, okay, we gotta wrap it up. But do we have another class potential after mine that people might need to jump to on Tuesday evening?
Let me check. Give me a second to look through it. I'll do it while we're talking.
Okay. Well, and what I can do is I can just have a time on, let's see here, calendar.
Do you remember what time it is?
Yeah, I'm looking it up right now. I'm teaching, I blocked out 5:30 to 7, so that tells me I'm teaching at 6. So are there any 7 o'clock classes?
Yeah, I'm sure there will be 7. There will be classes during every session.
Okay.
So it's possible people could be jumping on to the next class.
Okay. No, that's really good to know. So, and that's good. That helps me kind of have the whole context of the experience in mind. When we're all together in person, of course, the bell rings or the timer goes off and off we go. So.
Yeah.
All right.
Very good.
It was great to have Tim in there. I appreciated having his perspective.
So if you'd like to get, I think Sally could put together a list of the folks that were enrolled in the class. Okay. So if you maybe ping Sally, she might be able to I'd probably do it after Tuesday, so that way you could kind of send them all out at once if you're going to send out whatever info. But yeah, let her know what you're looking for, and she should be able to get them to you. So we did have some folks that didn't show up. I think we had 9 participants that showed up, and you may like I said, I think in my previous email you must have had about 12, I think, that were scheduled. So some of them didn't show.
Well, that makes sense.
But there were people that. Well, there were people that were, when they were registering for classes, I think sometimes they got a little confused. So they were selecting like every checkbox on the page, and it was like, how are you going to go to 3 classes at the same time? So I don't know what happened with that. So it could have been some of that type of thing going on.
Yeah. So I'm trying to play with.
If you don't mind, sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, go ahead, please.
I was going to say, if you could please look at the email I sent out the other day and go to the Google form that to record your attendance. That would be great. We had 9 folks that attended the class.
Do I just need to plug in the number, or do I need to plug in the names?
There's a slight form. You don't have to plug in the names. I think it's just going to ask you the number, but there's a couple of other things to fill out. You should know all the answers. You don't need to know who was there, just the number. Okay.
But thank you for confirming the number of folks in the class. I hadn't ever really counted, so.
Okay, you're welcome. It actually says, if you find yourself without a moderator next time, I'm hoping that you do. Hang on a sec. Let me just check that out. I think John and Kathy Lucas are going to be helping you out the next time.
Oh, yay.
And they will be moderating for you.
Excellent.
So, but yeah, just in case they forget to look at the number, if you look at the Zoom menu at the bottom, it tells you how many participants are actually on the meeting. And then you just, in our case, I subtracted 2 because it was you and me were the other 2. Or you can count me as a participant and say you had 10 if you want.
I don't know. Did you get anything out of the class?
I did. That was awesome. I didn't know anything about the thirds rule and all of that stuff. So excellent. Okay. Yes.
That's great. All right. Well, thank you so much. Any other feedback to make it better for Tuesday?
I thought it was excellent.
Okay.
I just keep it up.
Cool.
You're fantastic.
I'll add in Go
No,
ahead.
no, go ahead.
I said I'll add in the keep your lens clean. That was a good tip.
Yeah, that was a good tip. I was just, as soon as he said that, I looked at the back of my phone and I was like, okay, let me rub that off. I definitely need to make sure before I actually take a picture with it
Mhm.
that it's clean. But
Yeah.
the Piedmont Council's getting a great scout exec.
Oh, thank you. So if not immediately, then down the road, I'll get better with experience too.
No, they've got a great person in you. So that we're gonna miss you here.
Oh, thanks, John. I appreciate that. Well, cool. I will see you on the scouting trail. And thanks
All
again
right.
for being a moderator on this one. It was wonderful to have you here. And thank you for
Well,
all
thank
your
you.
work as chancellor. I know it's a pretty time intensive position.
Yeah, it's a little bit more than the hour a week kind of thing.
Well, you know that the hour a week comes from averaging it over your lifetime and the lifetime of your children.
Oh, that's true. And yeah, I thought it was an hour a week you get to sleep.
Outstanding. Thank
All
you
right.
again, John. Take care.
Anything else you need from me?
I will look for that email. If I can't find the Google link, then I'll let you know. But I know how to find your emails, so I should be in good shape.
Okay. Okay. All right. Take care, Kate.
You too, John. Thank you.
All right. Okay.
Bye.
Bye-bye.